be on this course with all these amazing people. So Carla talked a lot about what permaculture is, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the permaculture principles, because that was actually one of the highlights for me. I'm going to talk about three of my favorite permaculture principles that I learned about, and break it down a little bit, and then also talk about how I feel like we can apply these permaculture principles to our life and to our work, and specifically to our social justice work. So the very first principle that I loved was diversify it. So probably a lot of you have heard about monocropping and how growing one vegetable is really horrible for the environment, and it's not sustainable, it's not regenerative, it's not permaculture. And so diversifying it, growing lots of crops in different areas is really important. And that makes me think about the work that we do as social justice organizers, as just people living in this world, is that we need diversity, not only racial diversity and ethnic diversity, but a family needs support economically. We need a healthy education system. We need healthy food to eat. There's lots of all of these different things that we need, and we need a plethora of it, and we need a diversity of it. The second principle that I love is stacking functions. So everything is everything. We need all of it. We need supportive systems. And one example of this, of stacking functions, would be a pond. So a pond has many, many different functions. A pond helps cool the air as the breeze goes through. A pond is a home for different plants and different animals. A pond, you can use the clay from the pond to build with. So a pond has so many, many different functions that are a part of it. And I think that this also applies to the movement building work and the organizing work that we do, because we need multiple different systems that support us and support our lives and support the work that we do. Similar to what I just said. So we need social services, we need social justice organizers, we need activists, we need mothers, we need parents, we need families, we need all of it. Stacking functions, because without one of them, then the system kind of falls apart. And then the third one, the third favorite one is called edge it. And so if we look at the edge of nature, so if we look at the edge of a pond, if we look at the edge of a river, you can see that's actually where the most diversity is, and that's where the strength is, right along that edge. And it makes me think about the work that we do when we do coalition work. Or for example, I work for a reproductive justice organization, and one of the principles of reproductive justice is to work at the intersections. So my youth and I have worked on different campaigns around reproductive justice and toxins in personal care products. We've learned about the working environments of nail salon workers and electronic industry workers who work with chemicals that are really harmful to their bodies. So thinking about working environments, and also thinking about healthcare, and also thinking about reproductive justice. And then we've also been doing work around connecting reproductive justice and climate justice, and how that relates to their lives. So a lot of them live in low-income areas in Oakland next to freeways where they're inhaling lots of chemicals and exhaust. Some of them live near the Port of Oakland, where now there's one grocery store in West Oakland, which is awesome, but there's primarily only liquor stores. So we've talked about these intersections of reproductive justice and climate justice. So that's why I think working at the edge of things is really important. So that was one of the highlights for me, was learning the permaculture principles and then applying them to my work and also into my life. So switching gears a little bit, my youth and I this summer have been working on a story collection project. So their assignment this summer was to collect stories from their family members and their parents. And I wanted to share a story with you all. So one of the themes of permaculture that was really strong for me, and Carla mentioned it too, was reclamation. And so this might feel like it's a little out of nowhere, but it'll tie together, I promise. So I'm 4th generation Japanese American. My family's been here for many, many years. And my grandparents and my great-grandparents, when they moved here, they went into agriculture. And so they were growing things like strawberries on my grandmother's side. On my grandfather's side, they were growing apricots and peaches and cherries. And then World War II happened. So Pearl Harbor was bombed. Executive Order 9066 was issued, and all of the people of Japanese descent on the West Coast were incarcerated, they were incarcerated or interned. So they were rounded up, and the timing was actually really interesting because there were a lot of Japanese American families who were growing farms on the West Coast. So this was right before harvest, and they were all rounded up. And so my grandmother, she has stories about remembering having to leave her parents' farm, and looking out on the field of all these ripe strawberries that she was going to have to leave, and not knowing when she was going to come back. My grandfather talks about a story when he, for the first time, saw his dad cry, and as he was looking out on his field, because he was thinking about all of the work that they had put in that season to grow these fruits, and then they were going to have to leave, and all of them rotted. And so I feel like permaculture has been taken away from me, and it's been taken away from my family. And so this permaculture course was a chance for me to reclaim some of that history. I really felt like I was reclaiming some of that history that was taken away from me and my family. And to tie that now to the work that I'm doing now with my youth, they talk about similar stories about their family members in Cambodia, in Laos, in Vietnam, in the Philippines, in China, who had farms, who lived sustainably, who had gardens, and how they had to move because of war. Because of war and invasion, that was the word I was thinking of, and so they had to come to the United States, and here in an urban setting how hard it is to grow things, but they also talk about how their families have done that, and how so many of their grandparents and their parents have window boxes full of herbs, or vegetables and fruits growing in their backyard that are from their home country, and how they use those things to cook, and how they trade them with their neighbors. And I feel like they're learning permaculture, their families are practicing permaculture without even going through a permaculture course, and they're hanging on to that history. And Brock always says that permaculture is a new take on a 100,000-year-old idea, which I think is so true. Permaculture is nothing new. Permaculture is actually in the blood of everyone in this room, but it's been taken away from us in different ways, and we all have our own stories. And this has been an incredibly incredibly empowering experience for me to connect back with my history. So thank you.